Africa's second edition of the JAL Global Retail Estate Transparency Index is out. The report covered 15 of Africa's sub-Saharan countries, and the standards are improving but are still lagging behind the global expectation. In the studio to discuss more is Jeremy Kelly, Director, Global Research at JLL. Thank you for coming through, Jeremy. You listen to our troubles with state capture here. I'm sure your eyes are half offshore with what's happening between the Europeans and your leader, Theresa May. But let's talk about African transparency. I think that's a nicer subject to discuss. So this is your second edition.
That's correct.
Let's begin perhaps by just covering the major movements within that index.
Well, there have been steady movements across the continent. 10 out of the 15 countries that we track in Sub-Saharan Africa have shown progress over the last survey. But progress is pretty slow and pretty mixed, and expectations are rising amongst investors and corporate occupiers, and so the pace needs to pick up. Right. But some countries are doing better than others.
And in terms of the movement, are we seeing more movement up than movement down?
The majority of markets are improving, yes, which is encouraging.
Which is good.
Yes.
Right.
Very few countries, even across the globe, actually go back significantly. I mean, we do get a few examples. But,
sure. Let's talk about who has moved up and who's top ranking. Obviously, let's begin with the guy at the top and then talk about the guy at the bottom a little bit.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, South Africa, perhaps unsurprisingly, tops the ranking. It's within what we call the transparent category. Right. It's the only sub-Saharan African country within that is deemed as transparent because of its long history of institutional investment. But it's a country that's sort of struggled to maintain its global position. In terms of the movers and shakers, certainly Kenya is a country that has shown one of the strongest improvers over the last 2 years. Right. The presence of international real estate advisors, improvements in valuation standards, digitization of land registry. Yeah. As Nigeria, for very similar reasons, has also been moving up the ranking. Yeah. And the other dark horse is maybe Rwanda, sure, where we've seen an improvement. But discouragingly, yeah, most of the markets that we cover, yeah, even among the largest economies like Angola, yeah, and Ethiopia and Tanzania, are firmly at the bottom of the transparency spectrum globally. I
suppose it also reflects the size of the opportunity. So as they improve, so will the opportunity grow. But I was going to say that, with Kenya, if you've got that many international organizations, you can't help but get better, won't you?
That's right.
I wanted to understand what you measure before we talk about the dogs. I wanted to understand what you measure primarily to build this index.
Yeah, well, we cover 6 main elements of transparency. First of all, it's about regulation and laws, but importantly, the enforcement of those regulation and laws.
Okay, so a little bit strong legal system is important.
That's right, in terms of building codes, in terms of land planning, in terms of financial regulation. So that's the first one. Then it's about the transparency and fairness of the transaction process. So if you're buying and selling property, is the bidding process fair? Are you being advised in a professional way?
Okay. Then my view is not important, is it? You needed a professional advisor to be able to arrive at good value.
That's right, such as JLL. Okay. And thirdly is about the availability of market information. So can you track demand and supply and price in places like Nairobi or Lagos?
Yeah. And I suppose that's a big one, isn't it? Because when you look across the continent, you don't find that information easily.
There's very little information.
Yeah. Official information.
It's getting better, but it's still woefully poor compared to many other parts of the world. Yeah. The fourth one is about performance metrics. So can you measure the financial performance of that building? 2 more. One is the corporate governance, so the robustness of corporate governance standards and shareholder interests. And then finally, it's about sustainability. So are there metrics to measure green buildings or environmental protection? Yeah. So each of those 6 measures combined, we have 186 different indicators,
Goodness me.
which creates a composite index for each of the 100 countries across the globe and 15 in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Absolutely. You're demanding a lot out of us because we're trying to build houses for everyone, and now you want us to do green buildings and all those other complicated things. When you look at this year's index versus what we saw last year, we did speak about the fact that you had seen general improvements, but I wanted to know the movement at the bottom. Has there been any huge move out from the bottom, or are we seeing some people stagnate and stay where they are?
I think quite a few African markets having made progress, I would say, round about 2012, 2013, when we saw the rise of the lions or the gazelles.
Yes,
and
yes,
so
Africa rising.
There was a real boost from a relatively low base in transparency. But what we've been finding in the last survey is that there's been a lot of treading of waters. So places like Senegal, Mozambique, Ivory Coast, for example, have shown very little change. And then further up, those that are in the semi-transparent category, like Botswana, Mauritius, have also, they're pretty high in the transparency ranking, but they've also not made any major progress in the last survey.
Okay, so give me an idea. So you have this broad category. So you've got transparent, semi-transparent, and give me those.
So we have highly transparent, which no African country attains. So that's like the UK, US, Australia, Germany, for example.
Okay.
Then
the standards are the same.
Yes.
In terms of the measurements.
It's all measured on an equal basis.
Okay,
so we can. I mean, that's one of the reasons for us doing this index, is to make sure that we are comparing apples with apples.
Right.
Then we have transparent, of which South Africa is in that category.
And is the only one in Africa
the only
that sits
African
there.
country. Yes, so it sits alongside places like Poland, like Japan, like South Korea.
Sure.
Then we have the semi-transparent category, where many southern African countries are. So Botswana, Mauritius, Zambia, but also Kenya.
Okay.
And then we have...
Globally, where does that rank? I'm finding it interesting.
Kenya?
Yeah.
I think around about 50.
Yeah, but in terms of countries, sort of similar type of transparency?
Oh, so in semi-transparent, you would get countries like Indonesia, Philippines.
I'm not going there.
Those sorts of markets.
Okay, so that doesn't sound very attractive, yeah.
And then the low transparency, of which Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda are part of. A global example would be sort of Vietnam, would be, and then we have the opaque category, which is unfortunately where Angola, Tanzania, Mozambique, Senegal are located.
And below opaque?
There's nothing below opaque.
There are 40 other African countries that sit there.
Well, there are those that are not.
They are unranked.
They're not even in the survey.
Their standards are not there.
Yes, so we might have the Democratic Republic of Congo or Zimbabwe, which are not in the survey at this moment in time.
It's just that I don't have time. I would have pressed you a little bit on it, but I wanted to know, why is it important for these places to be transparent? What does it help?
Well, you can sort of answer that in two levels. On the first level, it's the foundation of an important real estate market. So it's about being able to invest or to occupy property with confidence.
Sure.
But more importantly, it goes far beyond the importance of just the real estate industry. It's about a tool to effectively manage an economy. A city can't operate without a transparent real estate market, which 100%. Is particularly important in Sub-Saharan Africa, where you're seeing phenomenal urbanization.
And of course, it helps that foreign investors know how transparent you are if they want to bring their money in.
Exactly.
Are you seeing a lot of interest?
We're seeing a lot more interest, yes, but it's at this stage it's rather a watching brief, I think.
Right. Jeremy, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
That's Jeremy Kelly, Director of Global Research at JLL.